Welcome back to Real Mob Stories. I'm your host, James Proctor, and today's episode is a full plate, my friends. We've got some fresh developments, a couple of blasts from the past, and yes, some of that good old drama the mob world never runs out of. Let's start with the headlines. Gene Borrello was back in court this week, trying to get some wiggle room in his pretrial conditions. Let's just say it didn't go the way he hoped. The judge had other plans. Then we head over to New Jersey, where a big bust involving the Lucchese family went down. Poker clubs, online sports books, and even a city councilman wrapped up in the mix. We're breaking down who's who and what this really means because, trust me, not everyone charged is a big fish, and I've got thoughts. We also say goodbye to a real old school guy, Phil the Undertaker LaMela. If you've never heard him, you're about to. He is one of those quiet types that kept the machinery running behind the scenes, the kind of guy who didn't get headlines until now. And of course, we'll wrap it up with a segment I like to call Scattershooting with James Proctor. Some quick hits, real talk, and yeah, I got to call out John Pennisi this week for something I think crosses the line. We just crossed 40,000 subscribers, and let me say from the bottom of my heart, thank you. The support, the comments, the people digging into our shorts library. It means everything. This show is for people who want the real story told with respect, research, and none of the fluff. So pour a coffee, get comfortable, and let's get into it. All right, let's start with the latest twist in the ongoing saga of Gene Borrello. And trust me, it's got a lot of layers. This past Tuesday, April 8th, Gene was back in court, hoping to get some relief from the strict pretrial conditions he's under. Right now, he's out on a $6,000 bond. He's wearing a GPS monitor and under what's called level 2 house arrest, which means he's got to be home between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. No exceptions. Now, Gene's attorneys filed a motion to modify those pretrial conditions. Why? Because he's working as a technician for a company called Phoenix Power Consulting, doing 24-hour emergency electrical work all over the state of Florida. The pitch to the judge was that he needed a flexible schedule to work and travel. They even brought up his boss, Tommy De La Cruz, to vouch for him. But the state wasn't buying it, and neither was the judge. The prosecution argued that giving Gene free movement across the state would be a risk to public safety. The judge agreed and denied the motion. But here's the nuance. He still can work. The court made it clear as long as he sticks to the home curfew, he can do his job. And that's a bit of a compromise, but not the open schedule his team wanted. And then there was another interesting development. Gene moved from, I believe it's called Dania Beach, to Sunny Isles Beach. And get this, apparently he's allergic to cats, and that was the reason for the change. The court approved the move, so at least one thing's going his way. Now let's talk about what's next. We've got a felony sounding set for June 18th, and that's where the state and the defense will sit down and try to hammer out a plea deal. If they can't come to an agreement, then it's a full steam ahead to a trial on July 7th. Let's not forget what the case is about. Gene's facing a felony strong-arm robbery charge and a misdemeanor battery charge. And the alleged victim, who we'll only refer to by her first name, Jordan, recently appeared on the Skinny with Joey Merlino. There's a video of the incident. It shows Gene allegedly dragging Jordan into the kitchen where she hits her head on the island, and then Gene appears to grab her phone. Now, there was some rumors swirling online about the video being staged, but let's be clear, the footage came from a Ring security camera in the apartment. So this wasn't a setup, it was just a situation that happened to be caught on tape. The court has a no contact order in place, and we give credit where credit's due. So far, Gene seems to be abiding by it. No direct or indirect communication with Jordan, and no violations on that front have been reported. Now, look, we're not here to pass judgment for the facts come out in court. That's why there's trials. That's what trials are for. But I do think it's telling how tightly the court is keeping Gene on a leash. The state still sees him as a danger, and they're not cutting any corners here. So we'll be watching this one closely. June 18th is the next major date. and we'll keep you posted, whether it's a plea deal or a full-blown trial. You'll hear it here first. Let's head over to Jersey now, where a big flashy bust involving the Lucchese crime family made headlines this week. The words racketeering, money laundering, and illegal gambling were flying around like confetti at a mob wedding. But when you dig into it, like we do here at Real Mob Stories, the story's a little more nuanced. On April 9th, law enforcement executed search warrants at 12 locations across North Jersey. That included 4 illegal poker clubs, some of them stashed in the back of real restaurants, plus a business in Patterson full of gambling machines and also several private homes. And out of this, 39 people were charged. It sounds big, right? But let's talk about who really matters in this crew. At the top of the chart, you have Georgie Neck, Zappola. He's a heavyweight from the Brooklyn faction, allegedly, and a longtime player in the Lucchese hierarchy. He's been around since the days of Gas Pipe Casso. He's a guy with a very serious resume, including some deeply buried secrets, if you catch my drift. And then there's Joseph, Big Joe Perna. He's a captain of the New Jersey faction, allegedly. And this guy comes from mob royalty. His father, Michael Perna, was a powerful figure, and Joe got his button several years ago, so he's no stranger to the headlines. And then you have John Perna, Joe's cousin and a soldier, and you might remember him as the guy who pled guilty to assaulting a guy over a wedding discount tied to the Real Housewives of New Jersey crew. Yeah, it's that one. And he served time, got out, and now, boom, he's back in the spotlight. And then there's Wayne Cross, 75 years old, who's being painted by the New Jersey Attorney General's office as a Lucchese soldier. But let's be clear, Wayne's not a made guy. He's an associate and likely a name they threw in to pad out the indictment. So this was a classic setup with a modern twist. You had poker games being run out of back rooms with managers collecting rent from game hosts. Then there's their cut of the profits. And then you had gambling machines. You had these hosts bringing in players, feeding them, and taking a rake off every hand played. And online, that's where it gets slick. These guys were running sports books on foreign websites in Costa Rica using agents and sub-agents to manage bettors and packers. And kind of your modern day version of your neighborhood bookie, but just in the digital world. Money flowed up the ladder. Threats were allegedly used to settle debts, and they laundered the proceeds through businesses and shell companies. Real Soprano-style stuff, except this time the state's got screenshots and wiretaps, and it's been going on for 2 years, the investigation. And here's where I give you my opinion. Yes, it's a big list of names, but look closely. Most of these guys are low level. They're club workers, hosts, small-time agents. The real heat, it's of Zappola, the Pernas, and the councilman Anand Shah, who said they were helping manage the games in the online sportsbook. Now, that part's wild. An elected official allegedly tied in with the mafia gambling operations. And that's why this case is getting attention, in my opinion. The rest of these guys, I think many will walk out with just slaps on the wrist, if anything. And you heard it here first. And one more thing. These weren't violent crimes. No bodies, no beefs, just money, cards, and bets. And that's why I say this bust, while high profile, is more smoke than fire. So we'll keep an eye on the case, but like I've always said, if the feds are now, in this case, the state doesn't have blood or big money moves, most of the guys will lawyer up, lay low, and move on. The headlines are loud, but the fallout, we'll see. Now let's shift gears. While the headlines were chasing the Lucchese gambling case, we quietly lost one of the real old school guys this week. Felice Phil the Undertaker LaMela. He passed away on April 8, 2025, and I want to take a moment to talk about who he was and why his name matters in this thing of ours. Phil was born in 1933 in New York City, but his roots went deeper. His father, Giovanni LaMela, also known as John, was an old-school DeCavalcante soldier who had a presence in Marlboro, New York, and he ran a sanitation business. Giovanni originally had ties back to Alessandria della Rocca, Sicily, which, for those who know, is the same area a lot of the Trafficante crew trace their roots to. He wasn't a flashy guy. Phil wasn't in the papers. He wasn't getting picked up on wiretaps or making headlines, but make no mistake, he played a role, and it was a very specific one. His nickname says it all, the Undertaker, not because he worked in a funeral home, but because he took care of problems. Anthony Rotundo, a turncoat from the DeCavalcante family, once told a story in court that says a lot. Back in 1989, after a botched move that was involving the successful Fred Weiss hit, a DeCavalcante associate named Joseph Garofano was lured into the garage of Capo Regime Rudy Ferrone's home in Mill Basin, Brooklyn. Rotundo said he heard muffled gunshots and then saw Phil LaMela pull into the garage. The body was loaded into Phil's car, and Rotundo later testified that LaMela took the body upstate to his property in Newburgh and buried it. Quiet, efficient, no drama. And that's why they call him the Undertaker. Phil once said to have been made into the DeCavalcante family during the late 70s, back when Sam the Plumber DeCavalcante opened the books. By the 1980s, he was listed in two crews, one in Manhattan under Larry Shorty Shiro and another in Brooklyn under Anthony Rotundo's father, Jimmy the Gent. And here's something rare in this world. Phil never got arrested, not once. No rap sheet, no trial, no press conference with his name in it. That's the kind of visibility in the mob world that many would like. So it's not luck, that's discipline. LaMela represents a vanishing breed. Men who kept their mouths shut and did what was asked and never sought the limelight. He wasn't a boss, but he was trusted. And when something needed to be buried, literally, he was the guy they called. Rest in peace to Phil the Undertaker, a man who lived by the code and stayed in the shadows. As the old generation fades away, stories like his remind us that not every soldier carried a gun. Some carried a shovel. All right, let's finish this up with a segment I like to call Scattershooting. This is where I talk about what's on my mind, what's going on behind the scenes, and call a few things the way I see them. Let me start with this. The mob content creation world. It's wild. Behind the scenes, you got more backstabbing than some of the stories we actually cover. And most of it ain't from wise guys, it's from YouTubers or wannabes. Now, look, I try to stay out of all that. I do my own thing. I don't play games, I don't do clicks, and I'm not in this to outshine anybody. I'm in this to tell real stories backed by real research and speak to people who respect the history, the truth, and the culture. I've got a few people I'm always grateful to. Michael Francis has supported this channel from the start. He's been on this channel. He let me interview him. Very successful interview. And I appreciate him deeply. Lee Cole, my old co-host, he helped lay the foundation. He gave me a chance in this genre where I had never been behind a camera before. I knew nothing about this. I knew history, I knew the mob, and I thought it would be something fun to be part of, and it just grew into something that is much bigger than what I'd ever dreamed of. And then we have Angel Gotti, always solid, always respectful. She might not agree with me all the time, but she's always been there for me. And that's the stuff that matters to me. But some of these other folks, man, the minute you start seeing success, they vanish. Talk a good game about loyalty until the numbers change. Then it's crickets. Or worse, they start tossing shade in videos, talking without saying your name, but we all know who they mean. And that's fine. I've outgrown it. I answer to the work, not the jealousy. I dropped a 26-page research paper this week comparing Tony Accardo and Carlo Gambino. I did this on purpose. I wanted people, one, to have the history, be able to have all of this research that I came up with. But two, I want you to understand what I go through to make sure that I have good research that I make sure that what we have is historically accurate. And the thing is that I had over a dozen sources in this research paper. It's all cited. It's all available for you to download. On the community page, I give the link so you could download it, no cost. You don't need to give any information. But the thing is, I just want people to know that's how we do it here. We don't just say, I heard this from a guy and call it content. My guy, Tony B, helps me behind the scenes, and I always give credit where it's due. We dig into the court documents, interviews, FBI files, and we don't make up things for views like some people. That's why I'm so proud of episodes like the one where we uncovered the truth about Billy Bats. We didn't just regurgitate the Hollywood version. We disproved Henry Hill's story from Goodfellas with real sources. Only one that's ever done that. There'd been a lie going on for 30 years, and we disproved it with one show. And I believe that's why you come here. This week, we just passed 40,000 subscribers, and I can't even begin to say how grateful I am. In the past 30 days, over 1 million views, 1,200 new subs, and people are going through the library of over 1,000 shorts that we built for you. And those 60-second mob history clips, they're resonating. I love that people are watching stories about the guys who've been forgotten, guys you'll never hear about on the mainstream channels. And that's what I live for. Now, I got to talk about John Pennisi for a minute. Let me touch on this one. I wasn't going to say anything, but I feel like I have to. This week, John Pennisi did something I consider a rat move. He took a private conversation and made it public, put it on his platform for views. And to me, that's scumbag move. That's low. I don't care what you've done in the past. I don't care what your excuses are. You don't air private conversations without permission, period. And it's ironic, right? This is the same guy who says his content's for the intelligent people in the room, but he's the one acting petty and condescending whenever someone calls him out on it. I don't operate that way. If I talk to someone behind the scenes, it stays there unless I'm told otherwise. And that's how grown men move. And that's going to wrap it up for this week's episode of Real Mop Stories. We've covered a lot today, from Gene Borrello's courtroom setback to the so-called Lucchese Gambling Bust to the quiet passing of Phil, the Undertaker, LaMela. And of course, we had a little real talk in Scattershooting with James Proctor. If you stuck around all the way to the end, let me just say you're my kind of viewer, the ones who appreciate the detail, the research, and the respect for the real history of Cosa Nostra. You're not here for the hype, you're here for the truth. Whether you agree with me or not, I thank you for being part of the conversation. The comment section's open. Drop your thoughts, your questions, even your disagreements. Just keep it respectful and real. We passed 40,000 subscribers this week, and that doesn't happen without you. The views, the shares, the comments, it's all appreciated more than I can say. And hey, if you're new here and you like what you've heard today, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button, turn on those notifications, and help us grow this community of mob history lovers who actually care about accuracy, context, and legacy. Until next time, keep your friends close, your enemies closer, your facts straight, and your research tighter than a capo's poker's bankroll. This is James Proctor signing off, and as always, God bless you, and I'll see you on the next episode of Real Mob Stories.